for Motohop on Air.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 1 of Motohop on Air. We appreciate you kind of checking it out while we're in this learning phase and kind of truly deciding what this podcast exactly is going to be. So bear with us as we kind of try a few segments here in the first few episodes and kind of see what sticks, what doesn't, and just kind of progress from there.
And let us know what you don't like.
Yes. Yes, you can email podcast@motohop.co with any of your feedback, questions, corrections even.
But only nice feedback. We don't want to hear the negative stuff.
Yeah, I mean, obviously some negative feedback if it's needed.
But tread gently. We have feelings too.
We do. So, where do we want to start?
So I want to know how you're feeling right now. Like, this is kind of a big deal for you. You've been like brainstorming and manifesting this podcast for months, maybe years now, and it's finally happening.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I am a huge listener of podcasts, specifically motorcycle-related podcasts, a bit of automotive stuff, and then a lot of tech stuff, because that's kind of the intersection of my life. I listen pretty regularly to Noco Moto, Cleveland Moto, and Motorcycles and Misfits, predominantly a little bit of This Motorcycle Life every once in a while. But as I told Missy a bit before we started, I don't know that she knew I did this. I did record one podcast previous to this years ago, whenever I was teaching myself to program and kind of teaching myself how to write iOS apps and website development. I recorded an episode of what I called, I believe, a tech cast. I had some wonderfully creative name back then, and made one, I think it was around 30-minute episode, and went absolutely nowhere with it.
Apparently.
Yeah.
It just burst into flames.
Yep.
So you got it out of your system, you gave it a chance, and you just learned it wasn't right for you. So good idea, bad timing, maybe.
Yes, potentially. So this one I plan on having many, many more episodes than one. Hopefully at least 2. We'll see. But
well, I know I'm excited for you to have somewhere to channel your energy and stories, because I may not be the best listening wall sometimes. So hopefully this gets you out there and gives you somewhere to put all of this information which you gather, and hopefully create a great networking opportunity through it, because we've already met so many people, the different podcasts you listen to. Yes. And it's been such a cool way to kind of interconnect with people. And for me, being not in the motorcycle, I don't want to call it industry, but it's not really as deep of a hobby as mine. It's kind of cool that I get to meet these very interesting people as, I don't know, outside of just their podcast. So I know them as people first and podcasters second, and you know them as podcasters first and people second, yeah. So it's been kind of a neat experience. So what are you most looking forward to?
In some ways, the fact that if you're going to keep doing this with me, you're forced to listen to me talk about motorcycles at least an hour a week, maybe more. My goal right now is for these to be around an hour long.
But what do you think my average consumption time of those stories right now is? Do you think it's more or less than that?
As far as how much you want to listen to, probably significantly less than that. What you're subjected to is probably more. But I get an hour of almost undivided attention of you listening to me talk about motorcycles.
I can't wait to find my revenge hobby. It's going to be good. It's going to be...
I keep waiting for this revenge hobby. It's yet to come.
Yeah, I'm really tired.
Yeah.
I'm just too tired to come up with any more hobbies. So I will just continue supporting yours.
Yeah.
And then what, do you have any reservations or concerns? I don't know. Do you just have any, anything you're worried about?
I mean, a bit of you just keeping your microphone in the right location, because we already had that issue with the recording the trailer, and we discussed it before we started this episode.
Wow, that sounds like a real concern. Maybe we should have a sign or something.
Well, I'm just hoping that if we do have bad audio, which is something I'm very focused on not having, someone lets us know. So
true.
feel
That's
free
true.
to email us if
Email
you have any
us. Don't put it in
audio
the comments.
concerns.
No
Yeah.
comments. No mean comments.
Well, I mean, I guess they could leave Instagram comments, but there's not really a comment spot on podcasts.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
So before we dive in, I do want to take 2 seconds just to acknowledge the shooting that occurred at Cook's Corner. We're not going to delve too much into it. It's just a supreme bummer that a corner of the motorcycle community, a place I've never been, but a lot of people that I interact with online hold near and dear to their heart. And I just kind of hope the best for everyone who is going through that, whether they're employees there, or had friends that were there, or lost a loved one in that event.
It's kind of weird that we're at the age that when these things happen, you really can finally put yourself in the position of like, that could have been me. And I think, at least for me, I was so detached from so many things, even like 9/11, even though I was in 8th grade. These tragedies are so surreal. But now that we're like in our 30s, it's like that could have been us.
Yeah, we all, want to make the most of our time, and we don't ever know exactly how much time we have left. So, yeah, I don't want to spend a bunch of time being kind of a downer at the beginning of episode 1 here, but I did just want to mention it. I think the moto community, kind of moto family, is pretty close knit, and when something like that occurs, it kind of has ripples that just spread throughout the community. So I imagine most people listening to this already kind of have heard about it. And yeah, so let's kind of dive in. Do you have anywhere you want to start before I pick somewhere to start?
Oh, I was going to do my fun little segment, but it seems so untactful now.
Okay.
I feel we have such a somber vibe now, but...
Well, then we can start with some news, and we'll kind of come back. So, the LiveWire S2 Del Mar, which, what a name they've come up with there. They, I think, could have just settled with LiveWire Del Mar, and if they needed the S2, put it on the end. But regardless...
It's kind of like a Photoshop file name.
Yeah. Yep.
Dot final underscore final
Yes.
underscore.
Outlined, right? Yeah. So the LiveWire S2 Del Mar, they're starting to put, we'll just call them, content creators, reviewers. Specifically, I saw Spite from Spite's Corner made a post on Instagram that he got to ride one. It is an interesting bike from the surface. So
let's go through specs real quick so everyone can kind of, if they're not super familiar with it, like crash course,
yeah.
Right?
So the final specs are a little different than what they were originally forecasting. Now, this is an electric bike. It is an area of the industry that I'm interested in. I have not owned an electric motorcycle. I have not ridden an electric motorcycle, but they do intrigue me.
I was hesitant just to like jump and get an electric weed whacker.
Yes,
that gave me
were.
Insecurity. So I can't imagine finally getting an electric vehicle, what kind of risks that comes with.
Yeah. So the S2 Del Mar has a estimated city range of 113 miles. It's going to do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. They're quoting 78 minutes for a level 2 charge. And that is just kind of at the top of their page here. Let me also mention the biggest difference between this real quick, the 78 minutes is 20 to 80% on a level 2 charger, which is an interesting charge range to pick because so much of what is quoted is focused on 0 to 80 or 90%.
Can you compare that to something like a Tesla that,
not a Tesla off the top of my head, but I do have a few other electric bikes I want to compare this to in a second. The top speed, I think is somewhere around, 103 miles an hour. So
it's pretty fast.
Fast enough. You're going to break any highway, interstate speed limit at 103 miles an hour in the U.S. Why this bike is interesting to me is this is arguably the first time LiveWire has kind of carved out a little corner that almost makes sense for them as far as performance to price. So the MSRP for this bike is $15,499, so $15,500. And the specs kind of actually line up with that price. So and this is part of the journey I want to talk about with this bike. So Harley, who originally developed an electric motorcycle called the LiveWire, before they spun it off into its own company that they have majority ownership of, what is now the LiveWire 1, which has pretty much remained unchanged, the Harley pricing was kind of absolutely crazy. It still doesn't entirely make sense at the current LiveWire pricing. So the Del Mar is the first model they'll have that kind of makes sense. And what's odd to me is we're finally getting to a model that makes sense from the price and spec perspective, and it's not a Harley anymore.
Womp womp.
Yeah, so when we look at kind of...
I feel like I need like a timeline or a diagram here.
Yeah.
It's like my brain is going to mush trying to follow all this stuff. So like my first introduction to this bike was when we watched Long Way Up. How many years ago was that?
This is the second model from that company.
Okay, well that's okay, but that was my first introduction to this, learning that it exists.
Yes, which is another interesting point. So LiveWire, in its kind of wholeness, is a very interesting exercise in, I'm going to call it branding maybe we'll say missteps, not necessarily mistakes, but I don't understand exactly where Harley thought they were going to spend money or where they thought this was going.
I do remember, was Ewan the one riding that one? Was that his name?
Who? Ewan McGregor?
Yeah. Was he on that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman both rode in the Long Way Up Harley Davidson LiveWires. Now,
they both had them.
Yes, they both had Harley Davidson LiveWires. But the interesting thing to me is, so you have the arguably two most well-known kind of, as far as content production, like long distance off-road riders. And Harley is in the midst of developing an adventure touring bike called the Pan America. And what did they choose to put them on? Not that, but a LiveWire.
And all I remember is how often they were trying to find ways to charge them. They were like out in the middle of nowhere and they were constantly dying from like the cold. So, yeah, I mean, it was bad. It wasn't horrendous. They were able to do it. They, I think, resorted to diesel generators once. And they worked with... They charged off the Rivian or something, didn't they? Yeah, well, and Rivian worked with them to put in like a whole... I think it was Rivian and maybe someone else. They worked together to put an entire charging network in kind of along their path. But, so Harley puts them on these LiveWires. They get all this publicity from The Long Way Up, which was a fantastic series. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it. Even if you don't like motorcycles. I mean, I enjoyed... Yeah. I mean, I like reality TV in general. I don't know why. Maybe because it makes my life seem better. But there's good storytelling. I mean, it was just an adventure to kind of watch. And what was it, like 5 or 6 episodes? It was like
no, I think it was longer than that. I think it was 10 or 12.
So it wasn't a movie.
You should rewatch it.
Oh,
yeah.
Great.
But so Harley spends all this time and energy. You know, they had to modify these bikes for this trip. And then, and we went to the Harley Museum a year ago. 2 years ago? Yeah, it was like spring of last year. Yeah, a year ago. I was so incredibly stoked to see that they had Ewan's bike in the museum. But the LiveWire is not a Harley model anymore. Womp womp. So why? Either they totally did not originally think that they were going to do this, which fine, but if it was an inkling in their minds, anyone in that boardroom's mind, that they were not going to keep these models under the Harley Davidson umbrella, why spend that time and energy promoting a Harley Davidson at the time model, and then you get what out of this? Essentially nothing.
Yeah, it seems kind of like someone had like either an oh crap moment or someone got fired or something.
Well, they did
like,
have a CEO change.
So maybe a lot of times when that happens, like the restructuring and the focus and everything like that. Because technically the company they sold it to is like a Harley spinoff, still
Well,
Harley
they
owned.
didn't sell it. They formed a new company. Harley maintains, I believe, around 70% ownership. And they did have the same CEO up until recently. There is a separate CEO now for LiveWire, whose name I do not remember at this moment. But they are technically a separate company and not wholly owned by Harley-Davidson, but majority owned by Harley-Davidson. But the difference now is, let's say you go buy the LiveWire 1, the original model they had, which is better price now than it was. We're talking, I think it's a little under 23,000.
Can you find those anywhere? Like, what's the availability of those?
Well, so that's the other weird part. There's not really separate LiveWire dealers.
Right.
I don't know if there.
Actually, there's one in Cleveland. I don't know how it's structured, but there is one in Cleveland we could, day trip to.
For a while they were still kind of sold through the Harley dealer network. I haven't really looked to see if that's still the case.
I didn't look to see. I looked on their website. Like I said, they have that Cleveland location on like West 150th, but I didn't look to see what the name of it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Let's see while we're talking if I can figure out where I can even buy one now. Just
by looking at their ads and stuff too, there's a lot of millennials and a decent female representation, which I thought was interesting. So maybe they see it as like a risky market and they just didn't want to risk tanking the name, so they like did their little spin-off situation.
What could they tank the name? This is already the company that's known for killing Buell, which in a lot of ways was the kind of only innovative American motorcycle builder, right? So Eric Buell starts as a Harley employee, designs and is involved with the FXR project, which among the Harley community is still one of the most widely regarded performance Harley models. Then he goes out, starts his own company, is developing radically different braking systems, fuel and frame systems. Harley acquires them, basically cuts the legs off of this by forcing them to only use the Sportster engines, and then mothballs the entire project. Buell, who essentially, in some ways with Ulysses, had one of the first adventure bikes, which is now one of the hottest segments of motorcycles for sale. So they already have this history of killing innovative things. So yeah, why not just do it again? We may have had traction with LiveWire. We may have spent all this money in marketing and getting them, to be more accepted, because electric motorcycles are still this kind of weird corner of the motorcycle community. And then we're just going to spin it off. And now, if I spend money on this LiveWire, I don't even get a Harley badge. Like, at least before it had a Harley badge and you could ride to the Harley dealership and be like, yeah, I rode my hog here and I'm buying a Harley shirt, right? And now, nothing. You've got a LiveWire.
Womp womp.
And I will say that address for the West 150th is a Harley dealer. It is Rock and Roll City Harley Davidson.
Scandalous. We should go.
Yeah, well, it's just going to be the Harley dealer with probably one LiveWire in the back corner, if they even have a LiveWire on
maybe
display.
Maybe it's in a closet.
Yeah,
maybe it's like shunned and you have to know a secret password to see it or something.
Well, and the interesting thing was when they first were bringing out the original Harley LiveWire model, they forced the dealers who wanted to sell it to put in charging infrastructure, which was kind of brilliant, because if you're going somewhere, and you're a Harley person, you're probably going to stop by the local dealership, buy a shirt. I mean, that's what makes...
And they're so easy to find. I mean, they're all off the interstates. It's already strategically placed.
Yeah,
way easier to find than almost a car charger, at least for a while.
Yeah, they were essentially on, the path to build the motorcycle equivalent of the Tesla supercharging network in some ways. And then they're like, we're kind of over this idea. And killed the Bronx in the process.
What happens if you buy one? How can you update it? Because obviously I feel like this technology is kind of, it's at the beginning, so it's going to spike really quick. It's the next couple of years are going to be drastically changed. Can you just swap the battery, or do you have to run a software update, or is your bike just a heavy paperweight?
It depends. The LiveWire 1, originally the Harley Davidson LiveWire, I'm sure there's been some underhood updates, but for the most part, hasn't changed. And that's kind of apparent when you compare it to other offerings on the market. So Zero, for example, has gone to the point that they are trying to, do this, we'll call it modular setup, where their bikes are upgradable to some extent. In some ways good, in some ways not so good. They've
you just
got
swap out that important middle piece and you're good to go, like a Lego.
Yeah, not exactly. But they also have their Cypher setup, which is one of those fantastic things that all the automakers are toying with, where pay for extra features that are already built into your bike. If you want 10% more range, we'll be more than happy to charge you money to unlock range that's already in that bike.
Oh, that's so awful.
Right? So the LiveWire 1, though, 146 miles of range city, 70 highway. All the highway numbers are in my notes here are at 70 miles an hour. A top speed of 110 miles an hour. The interesting thing about the LiveWire 1 / the original Harley-Davidson LiveWire, it is one of the only electric motorcycles that had DC fast charging, otherwise known as level 3 charging. That is what like the Kia EV6 and the Hyundai Ioniq 5 are doing to get their charge times down ridiculously. It did 0 to 100% charging in 60 minutes, which was...
That's still a long time, though.
It is, but when it launched, it was kind of a groundbreakingly fast charge time.
That's only like, you're literally charging as long as you're riding, almost.
Well, yeah, I mean, at highway speeds, yeah, kind of. If you're doing 70 miles an hour, you'll cover the 70-mile highway range in an hour.
I feel like it should come with a picnic basket, so while it's charging, you can like pack some cheese or something.
Yeah, well, maybe. But so when they rolled it into this separate company, it did come with a price drop. The current price for a LiveWire 1 is $22,799, so $22,800. Mm-hmm. Okay. To put that in perspective, the current price, this is as of August of 2023. Zero is running some incentives, but the Zero SR is it's not directly comparable. It's pretty comparable. It has 169 miles of city range. Contrast to the 146 that the LiveWire 1 has. It has 84 miles of highway range. Again, compared to the 70 miles of highway range the LiveWire 1 has. Now, its charging is a little slower. It only has the capacity to add on a level 2 or what they call 6 kilowatt rapid charger, which costs you extra money. But you'll do 0 to 100% in roughly 114 minutes because they put it in hours and it was, I forget, 1 point whatever hours. So somewhere around 114 minutes.
What I thought was interesting is if all the images on the website, they're like, look, we're in the mountains, we're in the desert. Look, I'm like, yeah, you're 200 miles away from a charging station
maybe
to take these pictures. And like, what happens if you die out there? So like, what kind of like, you call AAA? Like, how do you get like mobile charge now?
Well, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but I think I told you about this.
Yeah, you
There's
told me about him.
There's a guy with a
like,
Ford Ranger, I want to say maybe in Vegas, and he just drives around with a gas generator in the back of this thing and charges people to charge their dead electric vehicles off of a gas generator in the bed of a Ford Ranger.
So you just need to make sure you die in Vegas, like your vehicle
or
dies in
somewhere
Vegas.
near someone with a gas generator to recharge you.
That just seems so exhaustive for like, it obviously seems kind of like it's supposed to be a daily driver to and from work because the logistics...
It's arguably excellent commuters, right? Because the one big benefit of an electric bike is you plug it in your garage and you start every day with a full tank.
Yeah, right? And then hopes you don't have to drive like more than 50 miles to work each way.
Well, yeah, depending on what your commute speed is and everything.
Yeah.
But so that Zero SR exceeds the LiveWire 1 in every spec other than top speed. It's about 6 miles an hour slower. Only 104 miles an hour top speed. And it charges a little slower because it only has level 2 instead of DC fast charge. But including that level, or the 6 kilowatt rapid charger, we're talking $19,995. So almost $3,000 cheaper. And we have more range, and we're only slightly slower, and only charge slightly slower.
That's still, I don't know. I'm not sold.
So the Zero SRF has 187 miles of city range.
No, that's another LiveWire.
No, these are zeros.
Oh, zero. You said zero, and I thought number, and
yeah.
it's S2. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Well, yeah, they've got all these acronyms. Yeah, Zero motorcycles. Their SRF model, 187 miles of city range. So over, 41 miles more city range, 96 miles highway. So we're almost 100 miles of highway now at 70 miles an hour. Top speed, 124 miles an hour with 110 mile an hour sustained top speed. So now we're at the same top speed as the LiveWire 1. We have more range, and now a 0 to 95% charge on the 6 kilowatt charger is going to be 60 minutes. So the same charge time on a level 2 that the LiveWire 1 is doing on a DC fast charge level 3. So we have the same charging speed, we have a higher top speed, same sustained top speed, more range, and how much do you think it is?
Less.
The same price, arguably a couple bucks less, $22,795. So
still as much as a car.
But what benefit would the LiveWire have if it was still a Harley?
Well, it'd have community buy-in.
Well, it would have a big old Harley badge on the side, right?
Yeah.
So you at least were buying a Harley, but you're not. You're buying a LiveWire, right?
Oh, it's a cult.
I mean, I get it. I enjoy my Sportster. But I don't understand what they're doing here. Now, again, the Del Mar is interesting because it's carved its own little corner. We're talking about a $15,000 motorcycle. It is a arguably much better kind of city suburban thing. None of these are going to be the long road trip bike yet. The charge rates just aren't there. And that's kind of the next thing I'm really looking for is when they start getting these charge rates down significantly. Because if we look at the automotive community, they're charging much larger battery packs and significantly less time on these DC fast charge systems with some of these 400 and 800 volt systems they're running. I wouldn't care if it had a, 60, 80, 100 mile range if I could recharge it in 5 minutes.
How big are the batteries? Can you just carry an extra one, swap it?
No. I mean, they're not insignificant in size. I mean, the entire area where the, engine is on a standard, ICE or internal combustion engine motorcycle is where these batteries are taken up. And most of the ones we've talked about here, with the exception of the Del Mar, are kind of in that roughly 15-ish kilowatt range.
Maybe they'll have like pre-charged ones that you can buy at, well, I guess, I don't know, like Harley, maybe not. Like at convenience stores, like stop at Sheetz or Love's and be like, let me just switch my battery out and like get the core charge. You know what I mean?
So funny you say that. So the big four, the Japanese big four, so that's Kawasaki, Yamaha, Honda, and Suzuki, have just announced that they're working on a standardization for a battery swap setup.
Ooh.
Because we don't have fast charging capability figured out in motorcycles yet. Because part of the reason it works in cars is they will reutilize a lot of times either some portion of like a heating / air conditioning loop, or they'll have a dedicated heating and cooling setup for the batteries to get them to optimal temperature. But we just don't have that in motorcycles yet.
Well, there's obviously hopefully, this winter, by next spring, for the Midwesterners, they can come up with some sort of revelation that makes it a little bit easier. It seems like something, I don't want to sound sexist, something a woman would have solved for already.
Yeah. But to kind of wrap up the Del Mar, I'm interested to see what everyone says. The range / performance specs for the price are pretty good. Stuff comparable as far as price point on a 0 is going to have typically a little less performance. Similar range, typically, sometimes a little less range. The difference with 0, though, is if you like one of their models, they give you the option in their kind of gas tank, quote unquote, area. They let you typically choose on their models between a charge tank, which is basically a higher performance charger that's built into the bike, or what they call a power tank, which is an additional battery pack, normally 3.5 kilowatts. So nothing crazy, but on their, 7.4 kilowatt hour bikes, that's another 50% of battery.
So which one would you buy?
Until I see the reviews on the Del Mar, what I would buy is probably a pre-owned Harley-Davidson LiveWire to give me that Harley badge on the side.
Worth it, huh?
Well, the price is down. The zeros intrigue me. The downside with the 0 is, in some ways, they've actually updated their platform. The benefit of the LiveWire 1 / the original Harley-Davidson LiveWire, they haven't really changed it. That's a
catch-22. You almost with technology changing this fast, you would expect some change.
Yes. The benefit, and like I said, there's been some small tweaks. The benefit is a lot of the parts are Harley parts, as far as like switch gear on the hands, the hand grips. But also, we have multiple years of these bikes out there. So when we get to the point that we're going to need used parts off of, crashed bikes, whatever, there's a larger year range to select from. I'm not super big into the zero motorcycle, community to understand off the top of my head, what year ranges of stuff are interchangeable. I know that they've gone through a few generations though, so not everything is directly interchangeable to a zero of, 5, 7, 10 years ago. I don't even remember how long zero's been around. A while. Mm-hmm. So yeah, probably a pre-owned LiveWire if I had to pick one.
Okay. Well, I had a little would you rather outlined it. It's a little bit more drastic of a comparison.
Okay.
So would you rather own a LiveWire or a little variable on you here, a BMW i3. I don't know if they're all electric or...
Yeah, they have the range extenders in them.
They're pretty comparable in price.
You just compared a motorcycle to a car on a motorcycle podcast.
It's a moto podcast.
Sure. And we'll dip into
You're
four-wheel vehicles
You're allowed to like more
time.
than one thing. It's okay.
Yes. But I'd probably pick the motorcycle.
Really? In the Midwest. So living in Ohio, you're still like... I would assume, though, in this circumstance... You have a daily driver. It doesn't have to be the best thing. Like, I want to lay the land here. You have a daily driver. Yeah. But if you were to look into an electric vehicle, and that was like your minimum requirement, like I just want it to be electric. I wanted comparable price, similar range. It's in like the 70s as far as minimum range. But obviously you can take someone with you in a BMW and you can ride
I can put
it
you
around.
on the back of a LiveWire too.
Not 9 months out of the year.
But you'll
it's
be
really
there.
small.
Well, here's the...
Oh, that would mess up range too, wouldn't it? Yeah, more weight to that.
Yep, more weight, less range. The i3 intrigues me. I do not see it being an excellent winter vehicle in Northeast Ohio.
Well, neither would a motorcycle.
Sure, that's kind of my point. If I'm picking between two vehicles and neither is good in the snow, exceptionally...
It doesn't snow that much.
No, but if neither is an exceptionally great winter vehicle, I'm probably just going to take the motorcycle because I already have a good winter vehicle. So, yeah.
Okay, that was anticlimactic for sure. Okay.
So, touch on a couple other news issues. Just this one's more of a heads up for people out there via Ride Apart. Some 2023 Indian Challengers and Pursuits may have fuel line issues. It looks like they are doing a recall. If you are not sure if your bike is affected by this, you can always check with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Has a VIN check. You can punch it in there. Indian, I'm sure, will be reaching out to you if you're the owner of one of these bikes, as long as they have a way to reach you. And if you're not sure and you can't check with NHTSA, I guess Google. Find articles there going over the description of what date ranges these bikes fall into. But fuel line issues are not normally a good thing to have.
Give your bike some positive affirmations today.
Yes. At the very minimum, positive affirmations. Also wanted to touch on, Ride Apart. They had a story here. U.S. motorcycle thefts on the rise for the third consecutive year.
Interesting. I wonder what plays into that. Just people needing money in general, or like based on the amount of bikes we saw at Vintage Days without titles. I mean, and part of me is not surprised.
Well, that's very, very true. I don't know. I'm sure there's some economic factor at play here. I, knock on wood, have never had a bike stolen. It is not something I think about significantly.
We also live in an area where we're fortunate enough to have garages or at least hidden space. So we don't live in the city. So we're not parking our bikes on the streets or in parking garages or anything like that where we don't have like clear view of them for the most part.
Yes. And the biggest downside to having a motorcycle is they're small enough and light enough that even if you put any type of wheel lock or something on it, if someone is determined enough and can get a few buddies, they can just lift it up and put it in the back of a van and off they go. And you no longer have your motorcycle.
Can you get like tire locks for them like you can for cars? Is that like something?
Yeah, but back to you can just pick it up
and take the tire off?
No, just lift the bike up and...
Well, I know, but then
Yeah.
you've still got a tire lock on it, but I guess maybe that's not enough.
If you have enough time, you can cut any of those off. Right?
So also...
Donut Media on YouTube just did a fantastic video a couple weeks ago about tire locks on cars. And most of them they could defeat in like a couple minutes with like a pry bar and just bending them open.
Oh. So tell everyone what you've done in order, like if someone was to steal one of your vehicles, the inexpensive
I'm going to
device
give it away so my bikes can be targeted.
Oh.
But no. Yeah, I have put AirTags on almost all of my bikes. Now the downside to AirTags is people use them for bad reasons. So then Apple put out a way. So if you were being followed by an AirTag, you could make it play a sound. So in an effort to make it harder for someone who steals my bike to remove the AirTag, one, they are hidden, and two, I've removed the speakers from them so they cannot play a sound.
And you figured out how to do that just from YouTube, right?
Yeah, I mean, you basically take a knife, pop it in apart, and there's just essentially the voice coil of the speaker you remove.
It was minor surgery.
Yeah, I mean, I did it on the back deck with a pocket knife. It wasn't real bad. So...
Good luck out there, guys.
Yeah. 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 So
Well,
you mentioned vintage days. I would like to kind of touch on that a bit. So vintage days.
set the scene here.
So
Ohio.
this is AMA, the American Motorcyclist Association. If you're not a member, you should be. They do all kinds of fantastic stuff for you as a motorcyclist in the U.S. They put on a few events a year, big events. One of them is Vintage Days. It is at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, I think is the technical name, but the racetrack, Mid-Ohio.
And it's more like mid-northern Ohio, like northern mid.
Yeah, I mean, it's not Columbus. It's
No.
north of Columbus.
But for us, we're very fortunate that was very local. It's about an hour from where we live. And
Yep.
me, being the naive motorcycle wife that I am, had no idea that it was like some major deal event and just assumed that like everyone had it in their backyard. And I was like, where are all these people coming from?
Yes, that was quite fun this year. So last year was the first year we went. We just went for one day. Went because I kept hearing Cleveland Moto talk about it and how fun it was and wanted to check it out. So we went down for one day.
It was hot.
It was hot. We did not take bikes and we walked everywhere.
How many steps did we have? When you look up, it was like, was it 17 or 18,000 at least?
Something ridiculous. It was a lot. It is a big, big place.
I really just remember stopping to buy a t-shirt at Love's on the way home because I was so sweaty.
Yes. Yes. But it is a fantastic time. You should definitely check it out.
It's
This
kind
year-
of like, because so my friends have been asking me like what I did, you know, like where I was that week. And it's really kind of hard to explain. It's kind of like I say flea market and then they get excited. I'm like, no, not like that. You know, like my friends are all like hippie artists and like get really excited about flea markets, you know? And it's like, well, you know, it's not quite as fun as what, I mean, it's fun, but like not what they're thinking. So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard. I would say it's kind of hard to put it into words. You really have to kind of understand the culture. You kind of have to do it once. I would say it's probably the experience is what, like 30% camping.
So no, I think it's totally what you want it to be. There's so many different things going on at Mid-Ohio or Vintage Days. You can choose your own corner.
Choose your own adventure.
And not even realize there's a whole other section of things going on. Like we still have yet to watch most of the motocross, any of the hare scrambles, or drive over. They have at Ashland Fairgrounds, I believe it is, they do vintage flat track racing, including a no brake division, which is absolutely bonkers to me. As someone who has dirt oval raced cars, trying to do that on a bike with no brakes sounds intriguing to watch.
Sounds dangerous.
It does.
Not for your mom.
No. But you have kind of the main things going on at Vintage Days. You have one of, if not the largest, at least definitely in Ohio, probably in the entire U.S., vintage motorcycle swap meet areas. It is huge.
It was huge. It was probably almost as much as, well, no, they probably had more camping than that. It's all just so big. It's hard to comprehend.
Yes, the scale is just massive.
You need to really just look at a map and pick a traveling buddy. I feel like the best thing you could do is go with someone who's already gone before.
And bring small motorcycles to ride.
Meet.
Like a scooter.
Yes. Right? Scooter was good. Mini bike, it was fine.
Yeah,
What is that thing we had?
We took a a Monster Moto 80 mini bike. Think like old school single speed mini bike that Missy was riding on for a bit. And then I took my SSR Rascal, which is a 125, kind of like a Grom clone.
So if we could have taken the tires off of mine and put them on yours, we would have had almost the perfect vehicle.
Yes. Taking a 125 with street tires on it into the campground area was a little sketchy because things in the campground area got a little rowdy this year.
Well, not only that. I mean, it wasn't the rowdy as much as sometimes just the unpredictable moisture on the thing, too.
The rowdiness is what dictated the moisture on the roads.
Oh.
So there is the massive swap meet area. Then you have the racetrack that has racing going on that, you know, people stop and watch every once in a while. It's very funny to me because the big racing day is Sunday, and that's when everyone who's been in the campground all weekend is piling out of there because they're
going to work on Monday, and they're just like
vintage
tired.
dazed enough.
They've been hungover for 3 days straight, and they're just kind of like need to go home and like sniff a vegetable or something.
Yes. So then you have the campground area, and the campground area has all kinds of other craziness going on. So Nokomoto, Clevemoto, and Motorcycles and Misfits have gotten together and formed what they refer to as the FEMA camp, or kind of FEMA tent city thing going on. They've got a bunch of pop-ups. They let us put a 10 by 10 pop-up over with them this year.
Would that make us like refugees or something?
Well, I mean, disaster victims, which arguably you kind of are in that corner of the campground sometimes.
I definitely was. I mean, I feel like you guys were like not victim. I don't know what a victim by choice would be. I guess you're not a victim anymore.
No. But so they're in the northwest corner of the campground, on the west side of the keyhole of the track.
Cornfield.
If you look at the overhead view of the track, you'll understand what I mean. There's a hairpin turn that is nearest the main gates. There's camping to the east of that and camping to the west of that. So they are in the northwest corner of the west campground. That corner is also the Louisville corner. So I don't remember the name of I think they have a podcast, Louisville Moto, something to that effect. But that corner is where the captain resides. And if you want to learn more about the captain, Nokomoto had him on for an interview. The captain runs the burnout competitions in that corner. So the burnout competitions kind of start unofficially Thursday-ish during move-in. Someone will do a burnout, then kind of Friday, and then they really ramp up once the sun starts going down.
That would be part of not my chosen own adventure.
Yeah, it is.
It's fun to like walk by and like see it, but like kudos to the people that like, I love that it's there for people. I'd say there's enough different things that like, I'd rather sit by a campfire and watch the random Chinese lanterns float off into space because that was cool.
Yes.
That's more my vibe.
Yeah.
I will say I was very disappointed in the lack of fire that I encountered. Really shocked.
We'll do better next year.
Yeah, we will.
But yeah, it gets crazy in that corner. There is so much smoke, sometimes from the fog machines, because they bring in like full-blown DJ lights.
There was
like
no
everything.
air movement this year, I think was the problem.
There was no air movement, and that burnout, the smoke from the people doing the burnouts was crazy intense at certain points.
You could taste it.
Yes. I'm sure a lot of people close to the burnout area took multiple years off their life.
And maybe some inhalers.
Yeah.
They may need an inhaler now.
Yeah. But that corner is fantastic. Whether you want to stick around for 5 minutes at a time or if you want to go hang out all night, I think
it's a vibe. It's part of the experience.
It is. I was petitioning loosely among our group we were talking to that we need to bring in bleachers. We need like raised seating platform because the problem is it's all this flat area and it's like 12 people deep. And if you don't show up early to be at the middle of the circle right next to the bike that's doing a normally sketchy bike doing a sketchy burnout, you can't see anything. And I don't necessarily want to stand next to the sketchy bike doing the sketchy burnout.
I wonder what's more dangerous, having drunk people climb up and down bleachers or having a drunk person doing a burnout on a platform.
I don't know. I don't think it can get much worse.
I don't know. I just feel like the liability is like, how much can they really get away with until, I don't know. I feel like we're probably already
that corner is kind of unofficially AMA
list.
Sponsored, I guess.
Oh.
Like,
well, that's good.
We weren't there. I forget. I think Phil mentioned it. I don't know. Some years back. I guess like the AMA showed up with beer one night.
That's where we need to like set up a table in there of merch. I mean, we don't need to be in the swap meet area.
Yeah.
We need to be in the burnout tent.
Well, they did have people in there selling stuff.
They didn't seem to be doing very good, but
I mean, well,
it's probably
people are there to watch the burnouts.
Ebbs and flows.
Yeah. But yeah, so the other thing that occurs in the campground area is this official thing called barrel racing. So barrel racing is 2 55-gallon drums.
Barrels?
Yep, barrels. Some distance apart. I don't know if they're the same.
It's
every
kind of the
year.
fun of it. You
They're
just wing
kind of
it.
there. And it's not really competitive. You just go out there and you run as fast as you want to on whatever bike
And it was
you
a
have.
loop, right? It wasn't
Yeah,
like
it's
an
just a
actual
circle, just an
crazy
oval.
course.
No, just an oval. Everyone just running in circles, counterclockwise normally.
Which in theory is not a complicated concept.
No.
Right?
No, but it's fun because you have whatever crazy bike and there's legitimately some vintage bikes at Vintage Days that they may only come out a couple of days a year. Run it in the circle, right? But there's also fun stuff. In the years past, there's been this group of young girls all crammed onto a small dirt bike that are known as, I believe, the Unicorn Girls is what they were calling them. But
they were young,
this year,
right?
Yes. This year, it got shut down. Now, it got shut down, I believe, kind of due to injury. It was an adult that was hurt. There were large bikes going fast. and normally, like, a lot of what you see going around there is like pit bikes.
It was a ruckus,
like
is what it was.
Groms, like
It was
whatever.
I don't know. It just kind of sucks. Obviously, like, those are risks you take, but it also comes down to, like, this is why we can't have nice things, like
Yes.
between that and then things getting wet down. It's kind of like,
So then they bring a water truck out every once in a while to do kind of dust control on the dirt roads in the campground. And then they ran them again. And at that point, I figured out whenever I almost dumped my Rascal that it was no longer dust control, it was speed control. If you make all the roads mud, no one can ride fast.
yeah, you really kind of have to, like, I guess, like, coming up to next year, really contemplate or take really good notes. Honestly, you need to go almost a year to kind of feel it out. It's great if you can learn things before you go. But I feel like every year, you got to make a list of things you would do different.
Yes.
Otherwise, just by the time it comes around again, you're so hyped on going camping and hanging out with people and whatnot. You just kind of lose sight of, like, survival gear, like headlamps and making sure you have lighting to walk places because it's so dark there. I mean, it's out in the middle of nowhere.
Gets super dark at night, and it is mind-blowing to me. So this year, we did not camp. We hung out in the campground a lot. Like I said, Cleveland Moto guys were nice enough to let us put a little 10x10 over there, and we kind of left our bikes there for the night. But then we ended up booking the hotel that's not super far away. So every night, whenever we decided to call it quits in the dark, we would walk all the way from the campground, the furthest west point, essentially, of that area, to where we would park, which was kind of northeast area of the racetrack.
It wasn't that bad, though.
No,
because we weren't walking as much during the day as we had before since we had the bike. So
yes, the walk wasn't bad, other than the fact that you're like trying to keep your flashlight on your phone visible because you also have people running around, and they do police it to some extent. You've got the people at the entrance in the campground and a couple workers around there. Now, all of these are Mid-Ohio workers yelling at people that they need a headlight on their bike. Because apparently we have to tell people that if you're riding in the dark, you should have a headlight on your bike.
And these poor people are probably making like $10 to $15 an hour.
Yeah, whatever,
and
they
they're
have a
out in the
blast
sun.
though.
And it's like, come on, we're adults. Figure this out. But it's just one of those things that's so easy to forget. Like I said, just walking around as a pedestrian, you are a minority.
Oh, massively so.
Bikes have right of way, and it's just a very backwards concept for my pedestrian ways. I'm not motorcyclist first. So it's very weird.
Yeah, so if you're going to bring a bike to ride and you plan on riding it at night, it needs at least a headlight. It really should just have lights.
Bonus points
All
if
of
it has
them.
brake lights.
Yes, at least a headlight, preferably a taillight. And if you can have a brake light and turn signals, fantastic.
Or
Because
put neons on it. I mean, at that point, no one cares. They just need to see you. We're not going street legal here. We're just going like...
Yeah, I mean, we just want to make sure people don't hit each
Crash.
other or hit objects.
Mainly because no one's wearing helmets either, which I'm a huge safety advocate, but in that environment, I kind of get it. You generally shouldn't be going that fast.
You rode around without a helmet.
I know that's what I said.
was surprised.
I know, I should get like a bicycle helmet or something.
Liza busted out those
I know,
unicorn
that was
bicycle
cute.
helmets. Yeah.
Probably fit my head really well. I have a very small head.
Yes.
But really, you shouldn't be going any faster than you do in like a driveway. That
Yeah, I mean...
even if you do crash, you should literally just tip it shouldn't be a huge safety concern.
Yeah, I mean,
there's always a little bit.
There are people who do go fast.
But I feel like your legs are more at risk than your head should be.
Sleepy blasting by on his Buscadero 140 at one point doing, I don't know, the better part of 50 probably.
I guess know your people.
Yeah.
Know your people, know yourself.
Yes.
And if I hit double digits, I'd be surprised.
I mean, we did for a while on the scooter.
But I wasn't driving. Well, I guess that doesn't matter in safety.
No, but yeah, fantastic time. If you're going to take a bike and you're going to be riding at night, or if you're going to be walking at night, you need light. If you're going to take a bike, it should probably have some off-road-ish tires, not necessarily full knobbies, but maybe some kind of dual sport or something with a little chunkier block pattern. If you're going to ride it in the campground area, especially if they soak us down next year like they did this year.
Well, we were lucky. I will say that the weather wasn't as hot as it was last year. The one night was actually cold. I made you go grab like a pair of pants of mine out of the car. So obviously you just kind of have to watch that too a little bit. That doesn't make as much of a difference with the bike, but the overall experience can be swayed if it's 100 degrees or if it was 70 degrees like it was this year.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that was interesting was once they shut down barrel racing, I forget who it was. Someone equated it, and it was a fantastic reference point. Shutting down barrel racing is like sticking your hand into the middle of a school of fish. The fish don't disappear. They just go elsewhere. So... Oh,
yeah, then everyone moved to like moto racing or something after that?
Well, they started doing, whole shot competition / drag racing down one aisle of the campground. They took over the pit bike course, which is like a mini motocross track. Then they had to shut down the woods at one point because people were riding through the woods in the dark.
The woods are closed. Yeah. Nature's off limits.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a blast. You should go. If you haven't gone, you should also join the AMA if you haven't joined the AMA, because they do all kinds of fantastic stuff for you if you were a motorcyclist.
And if you're not a motorcyclist, Matt will happily give you a tour and you can meet us up while you're down there, because there are people that are probably listening that are friends and family and are just sweet and supportive. And maybe think that this isn't for them. But you know what? Maybe like on Saturday or something, y'all can come down and wander around and get the vibe.
Well, and odds are we'll still have the Scarabeo. So we did have a purchase at Mid-Ohio this year. We bought a Aprilia Scarabeo 150 from Phil and Cleveland Moto. And you referred to it as the golf cart.
It sounds like a golf cart, and it feels like a golf cart.
Oh, it rides like a golf cart. That thing is like a cloud, man. It is
cart. It actually
smooth.
I think it felt better on the bumps and the slow speeds when we were on site. That now on the road, it's not as like different. Well, also I was riding that ridiculous little mini bike that about vibrated the feeling out of my hands every time. So going from that to like sitting on something with shocks.
Well, between that and we didn't really get over maybe 25 at most at Mid-Ohio.
Well, it takes me a lot of mental energy to even drive something like that, because that's like not my vibe. So yeah, just to be a passenger princess is totally a load off. Just get the wind in your hair and sit on a nice seat with a back. It has a back, which is luxury.
And grab handles.
The grab handles are so good.
She enjoys having something to grab that isn't me.
Yeah, well, I mean, if something happens, you're flying too.
Well, yeah, you could always use me as a human sled.
I know. I think I just, I need that anchor. I need to feel like I have some sort of control and something hard mechanical, because no seatbelt, bro.
Yep. But yeah, so we'll probably take that next year. It's kind of got knobby-ish tires. And then the kind of last thing we'll discuss is also kind of modifications to another bike that may go back next year. So
I was just going to say that we were going to sell it.
What?
I guess
the Rascal?
Oh, no, I was thinking the mini bike.
Oh, no.
I was going to say mini bike for sale, but you keep talking about modifying that for fun.
Yeah, we'll get to that in the next episode. But the Rascal, the SSR Rascal. So this has been a ongoing, in some ways, project bike for a minute. So during the pandemic, Paul Tuttle Jr., if you remember American Chopper or Orange County Chopper, he started a online competition. I believe from memory it was called America's Next Greatest Innovator or something to that tune. And they were going to do multiple rounds. I don't think
I've never heard of this.
Well, you will remember in a second. I don't think they ever did a round 2, but round 1 was motorcycles under 100 and some cc's. So my Rascal qualified. So I had already started modifying it in a few ways. And if you're unfamiliar with the SSR Rascal, it's kind of a 125 Grom clone that ripped off a Ducati Monster.
It's cute.
It is. One of my favorite kind of custom bikes in that world of, Ducatis and more sporty stuff. Bike, Exif, and a couple other places. I can't remember who all did a story on it. There was a builder who built a Ducati Monster into essentially a dirt bike and called it the Terra Mastro. And that was kind of where I was heading with the Rascal. Now, I was not moving fast enough to get it done in time for that competition Paul Jr. put together, but I did make the top 30.
Oh, was that the photo
yes,
contest?
and you took photos for me.
I took some good photos.
You did. It is a fantastic looking bike.
Include those in show notes, promo material.
Yeah, I'll throw them in the show notes. But after almost dumping it in Mid-Ohio, it prompted me to kind of continue down that road of finishing this mini, or if we want to stay with the Italian, Piccolo Terra Mastro project. So I ended up, the kind of main things that are left are, it already has a high exhaust that kind of mimics the original Terra Mastro project. I put on a round headlight to mimic the original Monster. It needs a high front fender, and the original Terra Mastro had like proper dirt bike knobbies. I still want to ride it on the street. I wasn't going full knobbies, but I wanted a dual sport tire. So I had decided on the Dunlop D604s.
And you just put those on, a couple weeks ago?
Yeah. I put them on. This is the first time I've done a lot of stuff.
Do you regret it? Or do you feel like the learning was worth? I don't regret
the tire. As far as like what you mean by that is, I actually mounted them on the wheel myself. This is the first time I've mounted tires with tire spoons. I now fully understand why automatic tire mounting machines exist. And at some point in the future, I will probably acquire one.
So as a female, I just assume that tires come on rims. And then this is one of those things that I've learned is that tires and rims are separate parts.
Yes.
And it's very somewhat overwhelming how complicated vehicles get once you understand them.
Yeah, there's a lot of parts that makes that machine that has controlled explosions go down the street every day. I had... In the past, I've torn apart all kinds of stuff over my life working on motors. I've swapped motors entirely in a race car that I had for a while. We locked up a motor mid-season, and me and my buddy Jerry, who I hope will be on this podcast at some point.
Shout out Jerry.
Yeah, shout out Jerry. Over the course of a week, we were working at the same place. We'd work all day. Go home, eat dinner, go back to the shop because we were working on it in the warehouse of the place we were working, and then work on this thing until the wee hours of the morning. Go home, get 2 hours of sleep, and go back to work the next day for a few days to get this engine swapped out mid-season. But anyways, so most things mechanical on my vehicles, I do myself. I've never had a desire to do tires. Even on my bikes, I'll just take the wheel to a dealer, normally Iron Pony in Columbus, because they've have always had pretty fair pricing and they're quick. But I called them up and they did not carry the D604, and the gentleman on the phone seemed to have no desire to order them. He didn't say it explicitly, but he really just sounded like... He just
didn't like his job, probably.
Yeah, he just didn't want to be on the phone.
He just said, not today.
And then he told me that they were charging $40 to mount the tire.
And how much was a tire?
I think I ended up getting them for $56 a piece.
So you were going to buy the tires and take them there?
No. I was going to buy the tires through them, but then they didn't want to do they did not seem interested in ordering the D604s, even though I've bought multiple Dunlops from them before. They had the Shinko Mobber, which is more knobby than I wanted. But spending $40 a tire to mount 12-inch tires seemed excessive to me.
Baby tire, it's such a little.
Yeah, well, and I'm taking them the wheel. And I know it's going to take them a few seconds to mount this thing because they have a machine.
A few seconds, yeah.
Yeah, so
they're making like $2,000 an hour.
Yeah, so I ordered tire spoons. and decided I was going to do them myself.
So,
I don't fully regret it, but I partially regret it.
I don't even remember what those look like. Those weren't the weird little like jackknife thing you bought out the other day. That was like some sort of gauge thing, right?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh,
They're
there's just so many things
long
that show up
silver
from
things
Amazon.
with handles on them. There's 3 of them.
Are they actual spoons?
The ends are spoon-shaped.
So we could eat ice cream with them?
I guess you could. They'd be really long.
So I could feed you ice cream with them.
I suppose you could. After getting... I did the rear tire first. After getting... The old tire came off pretty easy. I was feeling very confident. By time I got the new tire onto the wheel, not the bead seated, just the tire onto the wheel, I walked in the house and was like, I was sweating to death to the point that I told you.
There was more wet than dry on your clothes. Like,
Yes.
honestly, I couldn't even tell your clothes were wet because they were 100% moisturized. And you're like, look at this little teeny tiny dry spot.
No, I was like, this is the most I've sweat probably since 2-a-day conditioning in high school football. It was ridiculous how much that tire fought me. Now, in hindsight, I should have spent money on proper tire lube. I used what the internet said would work, soapy water. I guess it worked. I did get the tire on.
The first one, right?
Yes, the first one.
And the second one, you did what? A couple days later.
Yes.
You had to rehydrate yourself.
Yes. So both of them fought me getting the actual beads seated. I'm sure some weird tolerance issue between a Chinese wheel and the Dunlop tire. But I will say, the video that helped me the most was from Motorcyclist Magazine. I'll throw a link in the show notes. If you're familiar with Revzilla's Common Tread, Zach Quartz, Ari Henning, they both, I forget where they were before Revzilla, but at one point, Ari Henning was with Motorcyclist Magazine. He did this fantastic tire change video, and that helped me immensely. And I can now do it.
But didn't you get didn't you get some information from your dad too?
I did.
That like kind of saved your sanity?
Yeah, he reinforced what a couple
life
people
hack.
on the internet had suggested, which he, for reference, has been a mechanic, same as my grandfather for basically their entire lives. He's worked in a tire shop for a minute, and they would use Murphy's brand tire soap, which is like a
was
specific...
it tire soap? I thought it was just oil soap. It was just the stuff you clean the floors with, right?
No, they make specific tire soap.
That's not what we bought.
No, but the oil soap, which is much more readily available.
We got it at like Rite Aid, late at night.
Late at night, so I get this tire
It's
mounted.
9 o'clock, which is late at night for some of us.
Yeah. The Murphy's oil soap worked fantastic. Just light years beyond soapy water. So will I do it again? Probably not if I can avoid it.
Depends on the bike, maybe.
But I know I can do it. And if I'm stranded in the middle of nowhere and I happen to have a tire
and some Murphy's oil soap
and some Murphy's oil soap and need to put one on a rim or a wheel, I can. I now know how to do it.
That's important. Now you value someone else.
I do. I value automatic tire mounting machines supremely more than I did before.
So if you have a tire mounting machine and you want to make a couple bucks, let us know.
I need to, not that I need tires anytime soon. I need to find someone who's got a tire machine that'll do small wheels.
Shut up.
Well, because the hiccup is, I know people with tire machines, but none of their machines will go down to 12 inches.
Oh, so we need to find someone who's got a small one.
Yes. For me.
So if you bought one, and not you, I'm talking general senses of our audience.
If someone in Northeast Ohio has a tire machine that'll do 12-inch tires.
Yeah, and like, let's say you bought it for yourself, but it's just like sitting there. What a great opportunity to, like I said, make a couple bucks, put it back towards your hobby. Also prevent us from buying one, because you will always get some brownie points from me if you can prevent an additional purchase. Why not support each other, right?
Sure. Yes. But also feel free to not reach out so that way I have a reason to buy a tire machine.
Pick your side, friends. Pick your side.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a wrap. I think we're going to call that episode 1. Do you have anything else you want to touch on?
I don't don't think so.
Okay. Well,
I feel like we need to come up with some cool jingles or something as we like define our sections, but
yeah.
In due time.
In due time. But yes, if you have any feedback for us, again, you can email podcast@motohop.co. And we appreciate you taking the time to listen to episode 1 and hopefully a vote of confidence to us doing episode 2 and beyond.
Bye.
See ya.